My nephew's hand was 2 inches from my breathing tube when I realized he was going to kill me. I couldn't move. Couldn't scream. Couldn't even blink to warn the universe that I was still in here, still alive, still desperately fighting to stay that way. The only sound in my ICU room was the rhythmic beep of machines and Darren's whispered words that made my blood turn to ice. "You're suffering, Aunt Claire. It's cruel to keep you like this," he said softly, his fingers hovering near the ventilator connection. "The DNR is signed. The paperwork's done. I'm just helping you find peace." But I didn't want peace. I wanted to live. I wanted to grab his wrist and throw him across the room. I wanted to scream that I could hear every single word, that I knew exactly what he was doing, that I'd rather die trying to fight than let him murder me in this hospital bed. My body was a prison. My mind was on fire. He leaned closer. I could smell his cologne, the same one I'd bought him for Christmas. His fingertips grazed the plastic tubing that was keeping air flowing into my lungs. This was it. This was how I died. Awake. Aware. Helpless. Then the door opened. "Mr. Patterson, visiting hours ended 20 minutes ago." Nurse Lisa's voice cut through the room like a blade. Darren's hand snapped back so fast you'd think the tube had burned him. He turned with that smile, that perfect nephew smile I'd trusted for 28 years. "Just saying good night," he said smoothly. "You know how it is. Hard to leave her." Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family, enjoy the story. Lisa didn't smile back. Her eyes moved from Darren to the ventilator to me, and for just a second, I thought I saw something flicker across her face. Suspicion maybe. Or recognition. She stepped further into the room, positioning herself between my bed and my nephew. "She needs rest," Lisa said firmly. "The doctors have her on a strict protocol." Darren nodded, playing the concerned family member perfectly. He touched my hand, the same hand that had taught him to tie his shoes, that had signed checks to pay his college tuition, that had held him when his mother died. "Sleep well, Aunt Claire," he whispered. "I'll take care of everything. I promise." That promise felt like a threat. He left. The door closed. Lisa stood there for a long moment, staring at that ventilator tube. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and I tried with everything inside me to move something, anything. Just one finger. One eyelid. One tiny sign that I was trapped inside this body. Nothing moved. Lisa adjusted my blanket and left. I was alone again with the machines and the horrible truth. My nephew had signed a do not resuscitate order while I lay here conscious and paralyzed. He'd forged my signature on documents that would let me die. And he'd just tried to speed up the process. The worst part? Nobody knew I was awake. Not the doctors. Not the nurses. Not a single person in this hospital understood that I was screaming on the inside, that every test they ran that showed no brain activity was wrong, that when they talked about quality of life and letting me go, they were talking about murdering someone who could hear every word. 3 days ago, I was a healthy 62-year-old woman. I had a home, savings, investments, a life. I'd raised Darren after my sister died, treated him like the son I never had, helped him when he struggled, believed him when he said he'd pay me back someday. Now I knew exactly how he planned to pay me back. The machines beeped. The 4 dripped. My eyes stared at the ceiling, unable to close, unable to look away. And somewhere in this hospital, Darren was probably on the phone, checking my bank accounts, planning his next move. I had to find a way to tell someone. Had to move. Had to fight. Because if I didn't, I'd be dead by morning, and everyone would think I'd died peacefully in my sleep, surrounded by loving family. The door opened again. I prayed it was Lisa. I prayed it was anyone but him. Footsteps approached my bed. A shadow fell across my face. And then I heard the one voice I'd been dreading. "Forgot my jacket," Darren said to someone in the hallway. The door clicked shut. We were alone again. He walked to the side of my bed where the machines hummed and the tubes connected my failing body to life. "You know what's funny, Aunt Claire?" His voice had changed. No more concerned nephew. This was something colder. "I found your new will. The one you were going to sign next week. Everything to charity. After all I've done for you. I hadn't known he knew about that. My lawyer Judith had drawn it up quietly. We were supposed to meet next Tuesday to make it official. That's what this was about. Not mercy. Not love. Just money. Well, Darren continued, his hand resting on the ventilator controls, that will doesn't exist anymore. And neither will you soon enough. He wasn't going to wait. He was going to do it right now, and there wasn't a single thing I could do to stop him. 11 months before my stroke, I'd been standing in my kitchen making Darren's favorite chocolate cake when he knocked on my door at midnight. He looked terrible. Thin. Exhausted. His eyes had that desperate shine people get when they're drowning and trying not to show it. I messed up, he'd said, collapsing at my kitchen table. Bad investments. I took out loans I can't pay back. They're going to take everything. I'd sat with him until dawn, listening to his story. 28 years old and already 50,000 in debt. His business idea had failed. His girlfriend had left. He had nobody else to turn to. When he looked at me with those eyes, my sister's eyes, I couldn't say no. Family helps family, I told him, writing the check that would clear his debts. You'll get back on your feet. He'd cried. Actually cried. Promised he'd pay me back, promised he'd turn his life around, promised I'd never regret helping him. I'd believed every word. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was giving him a key to my house. For emergencies, I'd said. He was my sister's son. My only nephew. The closest thing to a child I'd ever have. After his mother died when he was 10, I'd become his guardian. Fed him. Clothed him. Put him through school. I'd loved him completely. He'd moved into my guest room for just a few months, while he got back on his feet. Those months stretched into almost a year. I didn't mind. The house felt less empty with someone in it. And Darren seemed to be doing better. He got a job. Talked about his future. Helped around the house. I should have noticed the small things. How he'd gotten interested in my finances. Questions about my retirement accounts. Casual comments about estate planning. The way he'd offered to help organize my paperwork. At the time, it seemed thoughtful. A nephew taking care of his aging aunt. Now I understood he'd been planning this for months. The morning of my stroke started normal. I'd woken up early, made coffee, and headed to my home office to review some documents. That's when I'd seen him. Darren, sitting at my desk, my laptop open, papers scattered everywhere. Financial statements. Insurance policies. The deed to my house. What are you doing? I'd asked. He jumped, looking guilty for just a second before recovering. Morning, Aunt Claire. I was just looking for the warranty information on the washing machine. It's making weird sounds. In my financial files? Oh, I must have grabbed the wrong folder. But something had felt wrong. The way he'd closed my laptop too quickly. The way his hand had been resting on a document that looked like my will. I'd brushed it off. Told myself I was being paranoid. This was Darren. My nephew. Family. 2 hours later, I'd been loading the dishwasher when my left arm went numb. The plate I'd been holding crashed to the floor. I tried to call out, but my words came out slurred and wrong. The room tilted. My legs gave out. Darren had found me on the kitchen floor. I'd still been conscious then, still able to see his face as he'd pulled out his phone. For just a moment, before he'd dialed 911, I'd seen something in his expression. Not panic. Not fear. Something else. Something calculating. Don't worry, Aunt Claire, he'd whispered, leaning close. I'll take care of everything. Those words had followed me into the ambulance, into the emergency room, into the darkness that swallowed me whole. When I'd woken up, I couldn't move anything. Couldn't speak. Couldn't signal that I was still in here, still thinking, still me. The doctors had used terms like massive stroke, and locked-in syndrome, and minimal brain activity. I'd heard every word. Understood every grim prognosis. Felt every terrible implication. They'd said I might never wake up. That even if I did, I'd likely have severe brain damage. That my quality of life would be non-existent. Darren had stood at my bedside, holding my hand, playing the devastated nephew. She wouldn't want to live like this, he'd told the doctors. My aunt was so independent. So full of life. She'd hate being trapped this way. He was right about one thing. I did hate being trapped. But I hated what he was doing even more. On day 2, I'd heard him talking to someone on the phone outside my room. Yeah, the house should sell fast. It's in a good neighborhood. And once the DNR is in effect, we're looking at maybe a week or 2 tops. Then I can access everything. That's when I'd understood. The stroke hadn't been some tragic accident he was helping me through. It was an opportunity. Maybe even the answer to a problem he'd been trying to solve. How do you inherit from someone who's about to write you out of their will? You make sure they die before they can sign the new papers. I tried to move. Screamed at my fingers to twitch, my eyes to blink, anything to show someone I was aware. Nothing had responded. My body had become a coffin, and I was buried alive inside it. But I could hear everything. Every conversation. Every plan. Every lie Darren told about my wishes and my dignity and my peaceful end. And I couldn't do a single thing to stop him. Until tonight, when he'd reached for my breathing tube and Nurse Lisa had walked in. Something about the way she'd looked at him, the way she'd positioned herself between us, gave me the smallest spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't as alone as I thought. The stroke had hit at 10:47 in the morning. I know because I'd been staring at the kitchen clock when my vision started to blur. I'd been a corporate attorney for 30 years. I knew how to stay calm in a crisis. I knew the signs of a stroke. Face drooping. Arm weakness. Speech difficulty. Time to call 911. I'd had all 3. What I didn't know then was that I was having a brainstem stroke, the kind that leaves your mind intact while stealing everything else. The kind that turns you into a conscious prisoner in your own body. The doctors had a fancy name for it later. Locked-in syndrome. I had a simpler name. Hell. Darren had called 911. I'd heard his voice, shaking and urgent, giving them the address. He'd stayed with me, holding my hand in the ambulance, saying all the right things. Hang on, Aunt Claire. Stay with me. You're going to be okay. I'd wanted to believe him. Part of me had believed him. Even when the darkness came and swallowed me whole, even when I'd sunk into that space between consciousness and nothing, I'd trusted that my nephew would take care of me. 3 days later, I'd woken up to realize that trust was the most dangerous thing I'd ever given him. The first thing I'd noticed was the breathing tube down my throat. Then the 4 in my arm. Then the fact that I couldn't move or speak or close my eyes or do anything except exist and observe. My body had disconnected from my brain. All the signals I sent, all the desperate commands to move just one finger, went nowhere. But I could hear. God, I could hear everything. The doctors talking about brain damage. The nurses discussing my prognosis. And Darren, always Darren, speaking in that concerned voice that everyone believed. My aunt was very clear about her wishes. She never wanted to be kept alive by machines. She valued her independence too much. Lies. All lies. We'd never discussed it. I'd been healthy. Active. I had no living will, no DNR, no instructions about end-of-life care because I'd never planned to need them at 62. But Darren had papers. Documents with my signature. When had he gotten those? How long had he been planning this? I'd replayed that morning over and over in my mind. Him at my desk. My financial files spread out. The guilty look on his face. Had he forged my signature then? Or had he been doing it for weeks, months, preparing for a moment like this? On the second day, I'd heard him talking to my doctor. I'm her only living relative. Her healthcare proxy. She put everything in my hands years ago. More lies. I'd never made him my healthcare proxy. I had a lawyer, Judith Chen, who handled all my legal affairs. But Judith didn't even know I was in the hospital yet. Nobody had called her. Darren had made sure of that. The DNR is signed, Darren had continued. If her heart stops or she stops breathing on her own, we let her go. That's what she wanted. Dignity. Peace. The doctor had agreed. Why wouldn't he? Darren was family. He had documents. He seemed genuinely heartbroken. Nobody suspected that the concerned nephew at my bedside was actually calculating how fast he could inherit everything I owned. That night, I'd heard him in my room after visiting hours. He'd thought I was unconscious. Maybe he'd hoped I was. He'd pulled a chair close to my bed and started talking, his voice low and casual, like he was sharing secrets with a friend. "You know what's funny?" he'd said. "I actually liked you. Growing up, you were good to me. Better than my own mom, honestly. But then you had to go and change your will. Charity. Can you believe that? After everything I've been through, everything you promised me, you were going to give it all away to strangers." He'd laughed. Actually laughed. "I found the draft in your office. Not signed yet, though. Lucky for me. Lucky that you had your little stroke before you could make it official. Really lucky timing, when you think about it." My heart had been pounding, but the monitors showed nothing. No change in blood pressure. No spike in heart rate. The machines said I was barely there. Only I knew the truth. I was very much there, very much awake, very much terrified. "The house alone is worth $600,000, Darren had continued. Plus your retirement accounts. Your savings. Your investments. We're talking about almost $2 million total. That's life-changing money, Aunt Claire. That's freedom. And you were going to throw it away." He'd stood up then, looking down at me with something that might have been regret. Or might have been satisfaction. "I'm not a bad person. I'm just practical. You don't need it anymore. And I do. So really, I'm just helping things along. Making sure the money goes where it should have gone in the first place. To family." Then he'd left, and I'd lain there in the dark, understanding exactly how much danger I was in. Darren wasn't waiting for me to die naturally. He was going to help me along. And everyone would think it was mercy. The next morning, Nurse Lisa had come in for her shift. She was younger than the other nurses, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes and gentle hands. She'd talked to me while checking my vitals, even though she'd thought I couldn't hear her. "Good morning, Claire. I'm Lisa. I'll be taking care of you today. Your nephew seems very devoted. He's here every day. You're lucky to have family like that." I'd wanted to scream. Wanted to tell her that my devoted nephew was planning to murder me. Wanted to beg her to look closer, to question the documents, to call my lawyer. But I couldn't make a sound. Lisa had finished her checks and moved to leave. That's when Darren had walked in, all smiles and concern. "How is she today?" "No change," Lisa had said. "But we're keeping her comfortable." "That's good. That's what matters." Darren had moved to my bedside, touching my hand in that performative way that looked loving to anyone watching. "I hate seeing her like this. She was always so vibrant." "It's very hard," Lisa had agreed. "But you're doing the right thing, respecting her wishes." If she only knew those weren't my wishes at all. That every word coming out of Darren's mouth was designed to ease his path to murder. That I was trapped in here, screaming silently, watching my own execution being planned in real time. That night was when he'd tried to pull the plug. When he'd reached for my breathing tube with those words about peace and dignity and ending my suffering. When Nurse Lisa had walked in at exactly the right moment and saved my life without even knowing it. Now it was after midnight. The hospital was quiet. And I was alone again, wondering if I'd survive until morning. Wondering if anyone would ever figure out the truth. Wondering if dying might actually be easier than being trapped forever in this nightmare, knowing what Darren had done and being unable to tell a soul. The door opened. Footsteps. I couldn't turn my head to see who it was, but I recognized the sound of Lisa's shoes. She came to my bedside. Stood there for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned down close, her voice barely a whisper. "I know you're in there." Lisa's words hung in the air like a lifeline I couldn't reach. I wanted to cry. Wanted to scream yes, yes, I'm here, I'm awake, please help me. But my body was still a prison, and I couldn't make it respond. "I've been a nurse for 8 years, Lisa continued, her voice low enough that only I could hear. I've seen locked-in syndrome twice before. The way your blood pressure spiked when your nephew was here tonight. The microsecond delay before your pupils react to light. The oxygen levels that fluctuate just slightly when people talk to you. You're conscious. I'd bet my license on it. She straightened up, checking the doorway to make sure we were alone. Then she came back, even closer this time. If you can hear me, if you understand what I'm saying, I need you to try something. Anything. A finger twitch. An eye movement. I know it's hard. I know it might feel impossible. But I need proof. I need something to show the doctors. I focused every ounce of will I had into my right index finger. Move. 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 I imagined the nerve signals traveling down my arm, imagined the muscle contracting, imagined the finger lifting even a millimeter. Nothing happened. My hand lay there dead and useless. It's okay, Lisa said softly. Don't give up. Keep trying. I'm going to come check on you every hour tonight. Your nephew is gone, so you're safe for now. But Claire, I need you to know something. She pulled a chair close, sitting down where I could see her face in my peripheral vision. Her expression was serious, almost scared. I looked up your nephew's visitor log. He's been here every single day since you were admitted. Most relatives can't maintain that. They get tired. They have jobs. Lives. But Darren hasn't missed a single visiting hour. That's either devotion or obsession. Or guilt, I thought. Or greed. Or the need to control the narrative. I also noticed something else, Lisa continued. Every time I've walked into your room unexpectedly, he's been standing near your equipment. Near the ventilator controls. Near the 4 pumps. Always with a reasonable explanation. Always with that concerned nephew act. But tonight, I saw his hand. I saw where it was going. She knew. She actually knew. My heart would have been racing if I could control it. This was my chance. My only chance. Here's what I'm going to do, Lisa said. Tomorrow morning, Dr. Morrison does his rounds at 7. I'm going to request a full consciousness evaluation. Not the standard tests they've been doing, but a comprehensive locked-in syndrome assessment. Eye tracking. Pupil response to commands. Brain imaging with specific protocols. They won't want to do it because your DNR indicates you wanted minimal intervention, but I'm going to push. DNR. That forged piece of paper that was signing my death warrant. I tried again to move, pouring everything into just one finger. Just one tiny movement. Still nothing. The problem is time, Lisa said quietly. I overheard your nephew on the phone today. He was talking to someone about your estate, about finalizing paperwork, about how things were moving too slowly. Claire, I think he's planning to do something soon. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe the next day. We need you to show us you're aware before that happens. She stood up, adjusting my blanket, checking my monitors. I'm going to leave the curtain partially open tonight. The nurse's station has a direct line of sight to your room. If anyone comes in, we'll see. You're not alone anymore. I promise you that. Then she left, and I was alone with my thoughts and my useless body and the crushing weight of knowing that my life depended on moving a single finger. Something I'd done millions of times without thinking. Something that should have been as easy as breathing. Now it felt as impossible as moving a mountain. I tried again. And again. And again. Hours passed. The night shift changed. Nurses came and went. The machines beeped their steady rhythm. And my finger lay there, dead to the world. At 4 a.m., I heard voices outside my room. Low and urgent. One was Darren. I'd know his voice anywhere now, that snake oil smoothness that fooled everyone. I know it's early, but I couldn't sleep. I just wanted to check on her. Mr. Patterson, visiting hours don't start until 8. That was Lisa, firm but polite. Your aunt is stable. You should go home and rest. I'm her only family. Surely you can make an exception. Hospital policy. I'm sorry, but I can call you immediately if anything changes. A long pause. I imagined Darren standing there, weighing his options, trying to decide if he could charm his way past her. Finally, fine. But call me. Even if it's the smallest change. I want to be here. Of course. Footsteps retreating. I'd been saved again. But for how long? Darren was getting impatient. I'd heard it in his voice. The barely controlled frustration. The anger lurking under his concerned nephew mask. He'd waited almost a year for his inheritance. Now he was so close he could taste it, and I was still inconveniently alive. Lisa returned to my room, her face visible in my peripheral vision. She looked tired but determined. He tried to get in. Said he had important legal documents that couldn't wait. I told him everything could wait until visiting hours. She checked my vitals again, then leaned close. Claire, I did some research tonight. Locked-in syndrome recovery is rare but possible. Some people regain movement. Some learn to communicate. But it takes time. Months. Maybe years. And I don't think your nephew is going to give you that time. I knew that. God, I knew that better than anyone. Darren had already tried once to pull my breathing tube. If Lisa hadn't walked in, I'd be dead. He'd make another attempt. Soon. Maybe when Lisa wasn't on shift. Maybe when he could slip past whatever safeguards she'd put in place. So here's what we're going to do, Lisa said, her voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. I'm going to test something. A technique they use for locked-in patients who can't move their limbs but might have some control over eye movements. I'm going to ask you yes or no questions. If the answer is yes, try to look up. If it's no, try to look down. Can you try that? She positioned herself directly in my line of sight. Can you hear me? I focused every neuron on my eyes. Move up. Yes. Yes, I can hear you. Up. The ceiling. Look at the ceiling. I strained with effort that should have moved mountains. My eyes might have flickered. Or maybe that was just my imagination. Again, Lisa said. Can you hear me? Look up for yes. I tried. God, I tried. The effort felt like lifting a car with my mind. And then, maybe, possibly, something moved. Just the tiniest shift upward. Lisa's breath caught. Did you just... Okay. Okay. Let me try again. Is your name Claire Patterson? Yes. Up. Ceiling. I focused everything on that single direction. This time, I felt it. Felt something respond. My eyes moved, just a fraction, but they moved. Oh my God, Lisa whispered. You did it. You actually did it. She grabbed my hand, squeezing it even though I couldn't squeeze back. Claire, you're in there. We're going to prove it. We're going to save you. I swear on my life, we're going to save you. She pulled out her phone, checking the time. 4:47 a.m. Dr. Morrison's shift starts in 2 hours. The moment he gets here, I'm requesting the full evaluation. And I'm documenting everything. Every test. Every response. We're going to build a case that you're conscious, that you're aware, and that someone needs to look very carefully at who signed that DNR. For the first time since the stroke, I felt something other than terror. Hope. Tiny and fragile, but there. I had an ally. I had proof of consciousness. I had a chance. Lisa stood up, her expression fierce. Your nephew is not going to win. Not on my watch. But even as she said it, even as I clung to that hope, I heard the sound I'd been dreading. The elevator doors opening down the hall. Footsteps. Familiar footsteps. And then Darren's voice, smooth as silk, talking to someone at the nurse's station. I know I was just here, but I forgot something in my aunt's room. Just need to grab it real quick. Won't take a minute. Lisa moved fast. She stepped out of my room, pulling the door partially closed behind her, positioning herself in the doorway. I couldn't see her face anymore, but I could hear the steel in her voice. Mr. Patterson, you can't be on this floor right now. What did you forget? My jacket, Darren said smoothly. Left it on the chair in her room earlier. I'll just duck in and grab it. I'll get it for you. Please wait here. There was a pause, thick with tension. Then Darren's voice, a little harder now, a little less charming. I'd prefer to get it myself. She's my aunt. This is ridiculous. Hospital policy during non-visiting hours. Family members aren't permitted in patient rooms without staff supervision. Lisa wasn't backing down. Please wait at the nurse's station. I'll bring your jacket. I heard footsteps. Lisa coming back into my room. The rustling of fabric. But there was no jacket. There'd never been a jacket. Darren had left hours ago with everything he came with. This was a lie to get back into my room. To finish what he'd started. Lisa returned to the doorway. There's no jacket here, Mr. Patterson. I must have left it in the waiting room then. My mistake. But his voice said he knew she knew. The performance was cracking. I'll come back during regular hours. That would be best. More footsteps. The elevator doors. Silence. Lisa came back into my room and closed the door, her hands shaking slightly. She pressed the call button, and within a minute, another nurse appeared. An older woman with grey hair and sharp eyes. What's wrong? The other nurse asked. The nephew of the patient in 412. Darren Patterson. He just tried to access the room during non-visiting hours. Said he left a jacket. There's no jacket. This is the second time tonight he's tried to get in here. The older nurse's expression hardened. I'll note it in the log. And I'll make sure security knows. We can flag him as requiring supervision during visits. Thank you, Margaret. Margaret looked at me lying in the bed, then back at Lisa. You think something's off with him? I think he's very interested in being alone with his aunt. Too interested. Margaret nodded slowly. I've been doing this 30 years. I've seen it before. Money makes people do terrible things. She squeezed Lisa's shoulder. Watch this one close. Trust your instincts. After Margaret left, Lisa pulled the chair right next to my bed. The sky outside was starting to lighten. Dawn coming. Another day I'd survived. How many more would I get? He's getting desperate, Lisa said quietly. That's dangerous. Desperate people make mistakes, but they also take risks. She checked her watch. 1 hour until Dr. Morrison gets here. 1 hour until we can start proving you're conscious. Can you last that long? Like I had a choice. But I understood what she was really asking. Could we both last that long? Because Lisa had made herself a target now. She'd put herself between me and Darren. She'd blocked his access. Questioned his story. Made herself an obstacle. People who got in Darren's way had a habit of becoming problems. And Darren solved problems permanently. Lisa must have seen something in my expression, some microshift she'd learned to read. Don't worry about me. I've dealt with difficult family members before. And I've got Margaret watching my back. She's been here forever. Nobody messes with Margaret. But Darren wasn't just a difficult family member. He was a man who'd forged legal documents, stolen money, and tried to murder his aunt. He'd planned this for months, maybe longer. He wasn't going to let one nurse ruin everything. The minutes crawled by. Lisa stayed with me, checking monitors, adjusting 4 lines, doing the busy work of nursing while really just standing guard. At 6:30, she did another yes-no test with me. This time, my eye movement was stronger. More definite. She documented it with her phone, recording the questions and my responses. This is good, she said, reviewing the footage. This is proof. Dr. Morrison is going to have to take this seriously. At 6:45, the elevator doors opened again. Footsteps in the hallway. But these were different. Professional. Purposeful. Multiple people. The day shift arriving. Safety in numbers. Lisa stood up, straightening her scrubs. I'm going to catch Dr. Morrison the second he steps on this floor. I'm going to show him this video. And then we're going to run every test in the book. She looked at me one more time. Hang on, Claire. We're almost there. But before she could leave, before she could take a single step toward the door, my monitors started screaming. All of them at once. Alarms blaring. Numbers flashing red. Lisa spun around, her eyes going wide. My blood pressure was crashing. Heart rate spiking erratically. Oxygen saturation dropping fast. Lisa lunged for the call button, shouting into it. Code blue, room 412. I need a team now. I wasn't having another stroke. I wasn't dying. Something was wrong with my 4. I could feel it now, a coldness spreading through my veins that didn't belong there. Something that shouldn't be there. Something that was pushing me toward the edge. Lisa was at my 4 pump, her hands flying over the controls. Oh my God. Oh my God. She ripped the line out of my arm, but the damage was done. Whatever had been pumping into me was already in my system. Doctors and nurses flooded into the room. Voices shouting. Hands working. Medications being pushed. But through it all, through the chaos and the alarms and the desperate attempt to save my life, I heard one voice in the hallway. Calm. Almost satisfied. Is she going to be okay? Please, someone tell me she's going to be okay. Darren. He was here. He'd been here. While Lisa had been watching the door, while she'd been protecting me from the obvious threat, he'd found another way in. Or he'd done it earlier. Or he'd paid someone. Or bribed someone. Or maybe he'd never left at all. The coldness was spreading. My vision was starting to darken at the edges. And I realized with horrible clarity that Darren had won. He'd actually won. I was dying, and everyone would think it was natural. A complication from the stroke. A patient who was suffering finally finding peace. Nobody would ever know the truth. Nobody would ever know I'd been awake through all of it. That I'd heard him confess. That I'd tried to fight. That I'd almost made it. Lisa's face appeared above mine, tears streaming down her cheeks. Stay with me, Claire. Don't you dare give up. We were so close. But close didn't matter. Almost didn't count. Darren had made sure of that. The darkness was coming fast now. And somewhere in the chaos, I heard him again. My nephew. My would-be murderer. Playing the devastated family member to perfection. Thank you all for trying. I know she's in a better place now. Not yet, I thought as the world faded. Not yet, you bastard. This isn't over. I woke up to the sound of arguing. Not the peaceful afterlife I'd expected. Not the endless darkness I'd been sliding into. Just voices. Angry voices. And the steady beep of machines that meant I was somehow, impossibly, still alive. You had no right to override the DNR. That was Darren, and he wasn't even trying to sound concerned anymore. His voice was pure rage. She signed those documents. She wanted to go peacefully. She didn't sign anything. Lisa's voice, just as angry. And I know that because I found the real documents in the hospital database. Claire Patterson has no DNR on file. No living will. No healthcare proxy naming you. Everything you submitted was forged. The silence that followed was deafening. I tried to open my eyes, tried to see what was happening, but my body still wasn't responding. Whatever Darren had put in my 4 had knocked me down hard, but somehow the medical team had pulled me back from the edge. That's a serious accusation. Darren's voice had changed. Calculated now. Dangerous. You're saying I forged my aunt's signature? On what grounds? On the grounds that your signature is all over her financial documents from the past 6 months. Bank transfers. Property deeds. Power of attorney forms. All signed while she was supposedly competent, but the handwriting analysis shows they're all written by the same person. You. How did Lisa know all this? How long had I been out? And more importantly, how was I still breathing? I'm calling my lawyer, Darren said. This is slander. I've done nothing but try to honor my aunt's wishes, and you're turning it into some kind of criminal conspiracy. Please do call your lawyer. That was a new voice. Male. Authoritative. Because hospital security has already called the police. And they're very interested in talking to you about the medication that was added to your aunt's 4 pump last night. The one that nearly killed her. Footsteps. Fast ones. Darren trying to leave. But then other footsteps, heavier, blocking his path. Mr. Patterson, we need you to stay right here. The police are on their way. Am I being detained? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm the victim here. My aunt is dying, and instead of letting her go with dignity, you people are torturing her with machines and accusations. Your aunt isn't dying. Lisa again, and I could hear the smile in her voice. In fact, she's been showing signs of consciousness for the past 12 hours. She can move her eyes. She can respond to yes-no questions. And she's been very clear about one thing. She wants to live. The room exploded. Darren shouting. Other voices trying to calm him down. The sound of a scuffle. And then suddenly, blessedly, I felt it. My right index finger twitched. Just once. Just barely. But it moved. I tried again. This time my whole hand flexed, just a tiny amount. Whatever drug Darren had given me was wearing off. The code blue had flooded my system with so many counteracting medications that something had broken through. Something had reconnected. She's moving. Lisa was at my side instantly. Claire, can you hear me? Move your finger again if you can hear me. I did. Twice this time. Stronger. My finger curled and uncurled like it belonged to someone else, but it was responding. Finally, after days of being trapped, my body was starting to listen. Get Dr. Morrison in here now, Lisa commanded. And someone keep that man away from this patient. More chaos. More voices. But through it all, I kept working on that finger. Then my other hand. Then my toes. Small movements. Tiny victories. But they were mine. I was coming back. Slowly. Painfully. But I was fighting my way out of this prison one muscle at a time. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time felt strange. Dr. Morrison ran tests. Shined lights in my eyes. Asked questions I answered with eye movements. Yes. No. Up. Down. Each response was documented. Recorded. Turned into evidence that I was still in here, still fighting, still very much alive. And through it all, I could hear Darren in the hallway, arguing with police officers, with hospital administrators, with anyone who would listen. His story kept changing. First he knew nothing about forged documents. Then maybe he'd signed some things to help his aunt when she was sick. Then maybe the bank had made mistakes. Each new version contradicting the last. By afternoon, I could move both hands. By evening, I could turn my head slightly. The doctors were calling it remarkable. Unprecedented. A locked-in syndrome patient regaining function this quickly was almost unheard of. What they didn't know was that I'd been conscious the whole time, working every second to reconnect my brain to my body. I'd had motivation. The kind of motivation that comes from knowing someone is trying to murder you. Lisa stayed with me through every test, every small victory. When I finally managed to whisper my first word, barely audible, just a rasp of sound, she cried. The word was Judith. My lawyer. The one person who knew the truth about my real will. The one person Darren had been desperate to keep away from me. I'll call her right now, Lisa promised. I'll tell her everything. But before she could dial, before she could make that call, a police detective walked into my room. Older guy. Gray hair. Eyes that had seen too much. He pulled up a chair next to my bed and spoke quietly. Miss Patterson, I'm Detective Martinez. I know you can't talk much yet, but I need to ask you some questions. Can you answer with yes or no? Blink once for yes, twice for no. I blinked once. Yes. I was ready. I'd been ready since the moment Darren had reached for my breathing tube. Did your nephew Darren Patterson forge your signature on legal documents? One blink. Yes. Did he have your permission to access your bank accounts? Two blinks. No. Do you believe he intentionally tried to harm you? One blink. Yes. God, yes. Please believe me. Please make this stop. Detective Martinez wrote everything down, his expression never changing. When he was done, he looked at me with something that might have been respect. You're a fighter, Ms. Patterson. A lot of people wouldn't have made it through what you've been through. He stood up, putting away his notebook. We've arrested your nephew. Multiple charges. Forgery. elder abuse, attempted murder. The DA is building the case now. But I need you to know something. He leaned closer. He made bail 2 hours ago. His lawyer got him out. So right now, Darren Patterson is a free man. Hospital security has banned him from this building, but that doesn't mean you're safe. Do you have somewhere you can go? Someone who can protect you? My heart, which had been beating steadily for hours, started racing again. Darren was out. He was out there somewhere, knowing that I could talk now. Knowing that I could testify. Knowing that his entire plan had fallen apart and I was the only witness who could destroy him. Before I could answer, before I could even process what that meant, my phone rang. The hospital phone on my bedside table. Lisa picked it up, listened for a moment, then her face went pale. "It's your nephew," she said quietly. "He says he needs to talk to you. Says it's urgent. Says he wants to apologize." Detective Martinez was already moving, signaling to someone in the hallway. "Trace that call. Now." But I knew it was too late. Darren wasn't stupid. He was calling from a burner phone. From somewhere untraceable. And he wasn't calling to apologize. He was calling to let me know that this wasn't over. That bail was just a temporary setback. That he'd found a way out before, and he'd find a way out again. The question was, would I survive long enough to stop him? 3 days after I started moving, I could whisper full sentences. A week later, I could sit up with help. The doctors called it a miracle. I called it rage-fueled determination. Nothing motivates recovery quite like knowing your murderer is walking free. Judith came the day after Detective Martinez questioned me. My lawyer. My friend. The woman who'd drawn up my real will. She walked into my hospital room with her briefcase and her no-nonsense attitude, took one look at me, and burst into tears. "I thought I'd lost you," she said, gripping my hand. "When I heard about the stroke, I tried to visit. But Darren said you weren't taking visitors. Said you'd wanted it that way. I should have known something was wrong." "Not your fault," I managed to whisper. Each word felt like lifting weights, but I forced them out anyway. He planned everything. Judith pulled up a chair. "All business now. Tell me everything. Every detail. Every conversation you remember. We're going to bury him, Claire. I promise you that." So I told her. About finding Darren at my desk. About the stroke. About lying paralyzed while he confessed his plans. About the forged DNR and the attempted murder and the poison in my four. Every horrible detail I'd been storing up, every piece of evidence I'd collected while trapped in my own body. Judith recorded it all, her face getting harder with each revelation. When I finished, she sat back and stared at me. "You remember all of that? Word for word? Even the parts about the accounts he accessed?" "Every word," I whispered. I had nothing to do but listen and remember. "That's going to be powerful testimony. But Claire, you need to understand something. Darren's lawyer is good. Very good. He's already claiming you were unconscious during all of this. That locked-in syndrome patients can't form reliable memories. That you're confused about the timeline and imagining things because of the brain damage." "No brain damage," I said firmly. "Tests prove it." "I know. But he's going to fight this hard. And he's got resources. He liquidated $30,000 from your savings before we froze the accounts. That buys a lot of legal defense. My money. Funding his defense against charges of stealing my money. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so infuriating. There's something else," Judith said carefully. "Darren's been talking to the media. Giving interviews. Playing the devastated nephew whose beloved aunt turned on him because of a stroke-induced delusion. He's very convincing." Of course he was. Darren had always been convincing. That's how he'd gotten away with it for so long. That's how he'd gotten everyone to trust him while he systematically destroyed my life. "What do we do?" I asked. "We build an airtight case. The forged documents are solid evidence. The financial records show a clear pattern of theft. The hospital has security footage of him trying to access your room during restricted hours. And we have Lisa's testimony about the 4 medication." Judith paused. But the strongest evidence is you. Your testimony. Your memory of his confession. When's the trial? Months away. Maybe longer if his lawyer keeps filing delays. Which means you need to stay safe until then. The hospital wants to discharge you next week. You're recovering faster than expected. But Claire, you can't go home. Not to your house. Darren knows where you live. He has a key. I'd already thought of that. Change the locks. Get security cameras. Hire someone. Or, Judith said slowly, you could stay with me. I have a guest room. Security system. And I'm a black belt in karate. Darren wouldn't dare try anything. The offer was tempting. But I was tired of running. Tired of hiding. Tired of letting Darren control my life. I want to go home. To my house. It's mine. I'm not letting him take that from me too. Judith sighed but didn't argue. She knew me well enough to know when my mind was made up. Fine. But we're doing this right. Professional security. Cameras everywhere. Panic buttons in every room. And I'm staying with you until the trial. Non-negotiable. Deal. Over the next week, I worked with physical therapists to relearn walking. My legs were weak from days of immobility, but they remembered. Each step was shaky but mine. Each movement was proof that I was still here, still fighting, still refusing to be the victim Darren needed me to be. Lisa visited every day, even after her shifts ended. She'd become more than my nurse. She'd become my friend. My ally. The person who'd believed in me when everyone else thought I was gone. I heard Darren's giving interviews, she said one afternoon while helping me walk the hallway. Saying you're confused. That you don't remember things correctly. Let him talk, I said, taking another careful step. Let him dig his own grave with lies. The truth always comes out eventually. You're really not scared? He tried to kill you. Twice. And he's still out there. I was terrified. Every shadow made me jump. Every unexpected sound sent my heart racing. But I couldn't let fear win. I'm scared, I admitted. But I'm angrier. And anger is better fuel than fear. On my last day in the hospital, Detective Martinez came by with an update. The DA had added more charges. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Criminal conspiracy. Each one carrying years of potential prison time. But he still looked worried. What's wrong? I asked. Darren's passport was flagged at LAX yesterday. He tried to board a flight to Mexico. TSA stopped him, but his lawyer got him released. Said he was just taking a vacation. But Claire, he's thinking about running. And if he does, if he gets out of the country before trial, we might never get him back. Then arrest him again. We can't hold him without more evidence. The judge said the current charges aren't enough to deny bail. We need something bigger. Something that proves intent beyond doubt. I thought about that. About Darren's confession in my hospital room. About the things he'd said when he thought I couldn't hear. What if I could get him to confess again? On tape. Detective Martinez's eyes narrowed. That's dangerous. So is letting him run to Mexico with my money. Claire, listen to me. This man tried to murder you. Twice. You cannot put yourself in a room with him. You cannot take that risk. I'm not planning to. An idea was forming. Risky. Maybe stupid. But it might work. What if he called me again? What if I answered this time? And what if that call was recorded? Detective Martinez looked at Judith. Judith looked at me. Neither of them liked it. But neither of them had a better plan. We'd need to set it up carefully, Detective Martinez finally said. Control the environment. Have backup ready. And you'd need to get him talking about specifics. About what he did and why he did it. I can do that, I said. I know exactly what buttons to push. Judith grabbed my arm. Claire, this is insane. You're barely out of the hospital. You almost died. Let the police handle this. The police can't get him to confess. But I can. Because Darren doesn't see me as a threat anymore. He thinks I'm a brain-damaged old woman who can't prove anything. He thinks he's won. What if you're wrong? What if he sees through it? Then I'll be exactly where I am now. Fighting for my life. At least this way, I'm fighting on my terms. They didn't like it. But they agreed. What choice did we have? Darren was planning to run. Once he left the country, justice would be impossible. We had one shot to get him on tape admitting what he'd done. We had one shot to make him pay for everything he'd taken from me. The plan was simple. I'd go home. Resume my life. Make it look like I was alone and vulnerable. And when Darren called, because he would call, I'd answer. I'd play the confused stroke victim. The forgiving aunt. The easy target. And I'd get him to tell me everything one more time. Every detail. Every crime. Every moment of his betrayal. On tape. In his own words. Undeniable. 3 days after I was discharged, sitting in my own house for the first time since the stroke, my phone rang. Unknown number. But I knew who it was. I'd been waiting for this call. I answered on the third ring, my voice shaky and weak like I'd practiced. Hello. Aunt Claire. Darren's voice, smooth as poison. I've been so worried about you. I heard you went home. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I held the phone with trembling hands, not from fear but from the effort of sounding fragile. Detective Martinez sat across from me with recording equipment, headphones on, monitoring every word. Judith stood by the window, her expression hard. They'd turned my living room into a command center, and I was about to conduct the most important conversation of my life. Darren. I made my voice confused, a little slurred. Is that you? Yes, it's me. I've been trying to reach you. The hospital wouldn't let me visit after that misunderstanding. But I never stopped thinking about you. Misunderstanding. He called attempted murder a misunderstanding. I wanted to scream at him, but instead I softened my voice even more. I'm confused about what happened. The doctors say I had a stroke, but I can't remember much. Everything's fuzzy. I could hear the relief in his voice. He thought I didn't remember. Thought the locked-in syndrome had erased his confession. That's normal with strokes, Aunt Claire. Memory problems. Confusion. The important thing is you're home now. You're safe. The police came to talk to me, I said carefully. They said something about forged documents? About money missing from my accounts? I told them they must be mistaken. You'd never do anything like that. Silence on the other end. Long enough that I worried I'd pushed too hard. Then Darren laughed, but it sounded forced. Of course I wouldn't. This is all a big misunderstanding. My lawyer says it'll get sorted out soon. But they showed me bank statements. Transfers I don't remember authorizing. My lawyer says someone signed my name on things. Claire, you're getting confused again. You authorized those transfers. Remember? You were helping me with my business. We talked about investments. We did. Yes. Before your stroke. You were so supportive. So generous. He was building a narrative now, creating a false history we could both believe in. You even joked about leaving everything to me someday. Said I was like the son you never had. I let silence stretch between us, like I was trying to remember something that never happened. Detective Martinez gestured for me to keep going. We needed more. We needed him to admit the forgery outright. I wish I could remember, I said finally. It's so frustrating. The doctors say my memory might never come back fully. They say locked-in syndrome can cause permanent damage even if you recover physically. That's what I've been trying to tell everyone. Darren's voice got more confident, more relaxed. He thought he was safe. You're not yourself right now. You're confused. That nurse, Lisa, she filled your head with all these crazy ideas about me trying to hurt you. But I was just trying to honor your wishes about the DNR. Did I really sign a DNR? I don't remember doing that. Another pause. Shorter this time. You must have. It had your signature. But what if I didn't? What if someone signed it for me? I let my voice get smaller. Scared. Darren, what if someone was trying to hurt me? What if someone wanted me to die? That's ridiculous. Who would want to hurt you? I don't know. I just have this feeling. Like something bad happened. Like someone was in my hospital room when I couldn't move. Someone who said things about my money and my house and waiting for me to die. The silence this time was different. Heavy. Dangerous. When Darren spoke again, his voice had changed. The friendly nephew mask was slipping. What exactly do you think you remember? I'm not sure. It's fuzzy. But I remember a voice. Someone talking about selling my house. About inheritance. About how they just needed to wait a little longer. Claire, you're confused. You were unconscious. In a coma. You couldn't have heard anything. But I wasn't unconscious. I let my voice get stronger now. More clear. I was locked in. Aware. I heard everything, Darren. Every single word you said. Dead silence. I could picture him on the other end, his face going pale, his mind racing through implications. Detective Martinez leaned forward, gesturing urgently to keep pushing. You reached for my breathing tube, I continued. You tried to pull it out. You told the nurse I was suffering. But you knew I could hear you. You knew I was aware. And you tried to kill me anyway. You're delusional. His voice was ice now. All pretense gone. Brain damage from the stroke. That's what my lawyer will argue. Everything you think you remember is just confusion and paranoia from trauma. Is it? Because I remember specifics. I remember you talking about finding my new will. The one that left everything to charity. I remember you saying how lucky it was that I had the stroke before I could sign it. I remember you counting my money like I was already dead. None of that would hold up in court. You can't prove any of it. Can't I? I remember dates. Times. Specific dollar amounts you transferred. I remember you saying you'd liquidated the house before the paperwork was even filed. I remember everything, Darren. Because I had nothing to do but lie there and listen while you destroyed my life. He was breathing hard now. I could hear it through the phone. If you're so sure about all this, why are you calling me? Why not just let the police handle it? Because you're my nephew. Because I raised you. Because some part of me still can't believe you'd actually do this. I let emotion crack my voice. Real emotion this time. Why, Darren? Why did you do it? I loved you. I would have helped you if you'd just asked. You were going to give it all away. The words exploded out of him. To charity. To strangers. After everything I did for you, everything I sacrificed, you were going to leave me with nothing. Detective Martinez was writing frantically. This was it. The confession. But I needed more. I was going to leave you something, I said quietly. 50,000. More than enough to start over. 50,000? He laughed bitterly. Out of 2 million? That's an insult. I earned that money. I spent a year taking care of you, living in your house, listening to your stories, pretending to care. A year of my life wasted playing the devoted nephew. And for what? So you could give my inheritance to some cancer research fund. So you did forge the documents. Of course I did. What choice did I have? You forced my hand. If you'd just been reasonable, if you'd just appreciated what I'd done for you, none of this would have been necessary. And the DNR? You forged that too. Someone had to make the tough decisions. You were suffering. Trapped in that body. I was being merciful. Merciful. I let the word hang there. Is that what you call trying to unplug my ventilator? Mercy. You would have thanked me if you could have. Being locked in like that, aware but helpless? That's torture. I was ending your pain. I didn't want to die, Darren. Well, you should have. It would have been easier for everyone. His voice was cold now. Clinical. And you still might. Stroke victims have complications all the time. Infections. Falls. Fatal accidents. Anything could happen to a recovering patient living alone. The threat was clear, undeniable, recorded. Detective Martinez stood up, making urgent signals. They had enough. More than enough. But I had one more question. One more thing I needed to know. Did you cause the stroke? Were you planning this even before I got sick? Darren laughed. Actually laughed. You think I'm some criminal mastermind? No, Claire. The stroke was luck. Pure luck. Bad for you, good for me. But once it happened, once I saw the opportunity, I'd be stupid not to take it. So you tried to murder me. Multiple times. For money. I tried to solve a problem. You're the one who made it complicated by surviving. By waking up. By remembering things you shouldn't remember. His voice dropped lower. But it's not too late to fix that. You're home alone now. Vulnerable. Still recovering. Who knows what might happen? I'm not alone, I said clearly. I'm never going to be alone again. And Darren? This entire conversation has been recorded. The police are listening right now. They've traced this call. They know exactly where you are. The silence that followed was absolute. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Shouting. The sound of a phone clattering to the ground. And Detective Martinez's voice through his radio. Subject is in custody. Multiple units responding. We got him. I sat back in my chair, my whole body shaking. Judith was beside me instantly, wrapping me in a hug. You did it. Oh my God, Claire, you actually did it. Detective Martinez pulled off his headphones, a rare smile on his weathered face. That was the most clear-cut confession I've heard in 20 years. His lawyer can't talk his way out of this. You got him. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. Empty. Because the nephew I'd raised, the boy I'd loved, the man I'd trusted, had just confirmed every horrible thing I'd suspected. He tried to kill me for money. Would have succeeded if not for Lisa and luck and my own stubborn refusal to die quietly. My phone rang again. Different number this time. I answered carefully. Hello. Miss Patterson, this is Officer Chun from LAPD. We have Darren Patterson in custody. He was attempting to board another flight to Mexico when we arrested him. This time he won't be getting bail. The DA is filing additional charges based on the recorded confession. He's going away for a long time. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you so much. After I hung up, I sat in my living room surrounded by the remnants of the police operation. Recording equipment. Legal documents. Evidence of how close I'd come to losing everything. Detective Martinez and his team packed up their gear, congratulating me, promising to be in touch about the trial. Judith stayed. She'd promised she would. You should rest, she said gently. You've been through hell today. I've been through hell for weeks, I corrected. Today was just the end of it. But I was wrong about that. Because 2 hours later, my doorbell rang. When Judith checked the security camera, her face went white. Claire, you need to see this. On the screen was a woman I didn't recognize. 30s. Well-dressed. Nervous-looking. She held an envelope in her hands. Who is she? I asked. I don't know. But she says she has information about Darren. Information that could change everything. The woman's name was Rebecca Chen, and she was Darren's ex-girlfriend. The one he'd mentioned losing before he came to me for money. She sat in my living room, that envelope clutched in her hands, and I could see she was terrified. I should have come forward sooner, she said, her voice shaking. But I was scared. Darren made threats. Said if I ever talked about what I knew, he'd make me regret it. Judith sat beside me, her lawyer instincts on high alert. What do you know, Rebecca? Rebecca took a deep breath and opened the envelope. Inside were documents. Lots of them. Darren and I dated for 2 years. I thought I loved him. But then I found these in his apartment 6 months ago. That's when I left. She spread the papers on my coffee table. My stomach turned as I recognized them. Copies of my financial records. Printouts of my will. handwriting samples of my signature, and notes. Pages and pages of notes in Darren's handwriting, detailing a plan. He'd been planning this for over a year, Rebecca said quietly. Before you even let him move in. Before the stroke. He was researching ways to access your money. Studying forgery techniques. Looking into how to fake DNR documents. I picked up one of the papers. It was dated 18 months ago. Long before my stroke. Long before anything went wrong. The header read, Trust Building Phase. Below that, a checklist. Move into her house. Become indispensable. Get access to financial documents. Isolate her from friends and other family. Every single item was checked off. Phase 2 was on the next page. Create financial emergency. Make her think she's my only option. Borrow money to establish pattern. Get her comfortable with me handling her affairs. Phase 3 made me feel sick. Incapacitation. Stroke would be ideal but unlikely. May need to engineer health crisis. Research medications that mimic stroke symptoms. Oh my God, Judith breathed. He was planning to poison you. The stroke beat him to it, Rebecca said. When he called to tell me you'd had one, he was almost excited. Said it was perfect timing. Better than anything he could have planned. I thought about that morning. The way I'd found Darren at my desk. The guilty look on his face. Had he been planning to drug me that day? Had the stroke saved me from something even worse? Why didn't you go to the police? Judith asked. I tried. They said the notes weren't proof of a crime. That planning something isn't the same as doing it. They told me to come back if he actually did something illegal. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. I should have pushed harder. I should have warned you. But I was scared and I thought maybe he'd just drop it. I didn't think he'd actually go through with it. I looked at the documents spread across my table. Evidence of premeditation. Proof that this wasn't opportunistic. Darren hadn't just taken advantage of my stroke. He'd been planning to destroy me for over a year. The stroke was just convenient timing. There's more, Rebecca said. She pulled out another paper. A bank statement in Darren's name. He's been hiding money. Lots of it. Offshore accounts. Cryptocurrency. Money he stole from you that the police haven't found yet. Almost $400,000. Detective Martinez needed to see this. Immediately. Judith was already calling him, her voice urgent as she explained what Rebecca had brought. While we waited, I looked at the woman who'd dated my nephew. Who'd seen what he really was and got out. Did you love him? I asked. Rebecca nodded, wiping her eyes. I thought I did. He was charming. Attentive. Said all the right things. But then I found these papers and I realized I'd been dating a stranger. Everything he'd shown me was an act. The real Darren was a monster. Yes, I agreed quietly. He was. Detective Martinez arrived with 2 other officers. Rebecca gave her statement, handed over the documents, explained everything she knew. With each new piece of evidence, Martinez's expression got grimmer. This changes things, he said when Rebecca finished. With proof of premeditation, we're looking at first-degree attempted murder. Plus the financial crimes are much more extensive than we thought. We'll need to get warrants for these offshore accounts. Freeze everything before he can move the money. He can't access anything from jail, Judith pointed out. No, but he might have accomplices. People we don't know about yet. Martinez looked at me. Ms. Patterson, I need to ask. Did Darren have any close friends? Anyone he might have trusted with account information? I thought about it. Darren had always been a loner. No close friends that I knew of. Just acquaintances. People he used. No one I can think of. What about family? Other relatives? His mother was my sister. She died 15 years ago. His father left when he was a baby. No siblings. I was his only family. Martinez nodded. We'll dig into his contacts anyway. See if anyone else was involved. He stood up, collecting the documents Rebecca had brought. This is good work. This seals the case. Darren Patterson is going to prison for a very long time. After they left, after Rebecca gave her contact information and promised to testify, after everyone had finally gone and it was just Judith and me in my house, I let myself feel it. The weight of everything. The betrayal. The hurt. The knowledge that someone I'd loved had spent over a year planning my death. I don't understand how I missed it, I said. All those months he lived here. All those conversations. How did I not see what he was? Because you loved him, Judith said gently. Because you trusted him. Because you're a decent person who couldn't imagine someone being that calculating. That evil. I should have been smarter. More careful. Claire, stop. This isn't your fault. None of it. Darren made his choices. He's the monster here, not you. But I still felt responsible. Responsible for being naive. For letting him into my home. For not seeing the signs that must have been there. My phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. Just heard the news. You got him. I'm so proud of you. You're the strongest person I know. That made me smile despite everything. Lisa. The nurse who'd believed in me when no one else did. Who'd saved my life multiple times. Who'd become family in a way Darren never really was. I texted back, thank you for everything. For believing me. For fighting for me. I couldn't have done this without you. Her response was immediate. You're coming to my wedding, right? 6 months from now. I already have you marked down as a VIP guest. I hadn't known she was engaged. Hadn't known anything about her life beyond the hospital. I'd been so focused on my own nightmare that I'd forgotten other people had lives. Dreams. Futures. I'd love to, I texted back. Wouldn't miss it. Over the next week, more evidence came out. Detective Martinez found records of Darren researching poisons that mimicked stroke symptoms. Found browser history showing he'd been studying locked-in syndrome for months before my stroke. Found communications with a pharmacy technician who'd been fired for stealing medications. The web of his crimes kept expanding. The DA called to tell me they were adding conspiracy charges. Darren had paid someone $3,000 to add medication to my 4 that night. A nursing assistant who needed money and didn't ask questions. She'd confessed everything when confronted with the evidence. He tried to buy your death for $3,000, the DA said, disgust clear in her voice. Your life meant that little to him. But I was still alive. Against all odds, against Darren's planning, against the poison and the forged documents and the attempted murder, I was still here. Still breathing. Still fighting. 2 weeks after Darren's arrest, I went back to physical therapy. My legs were getting stronger every day. My speech was almost back to normal. The doctors said my recovery was remarkable, but I knew the truth. I'd recovered because I'd had something to live for. Revenge. Justice. The chance to make sure Darren paid for what he'd done. Lisa met me for coffee after one of my therapy sessions. She looked happy. Radiant. Like someone who'd found their purpose. I've been thinking about what happened, she said, stirring her latte. About how close we came to losing you. About how many patients might be going through something similar, locked in and aware, but everyone thinks they're unconscious. It's rare, I said. The doctors said locked-in syndrome only affects a few thousand people. But those few thousand people matter. Their families matter. Medical professionals need better training to recognize the signs. She leaned forward, excited now. What if we started something? A foundation. Awareness campaigns. Research funding. Training programs for hospitals. I'd been thinking about the same thing. About how to turn this nightmare into something meaningful. I was going to leave my money to charity anyway. Why not start while I'm still alive? That's how the Claire Patterson Foundation for Locked-in Syndrome Awareness was born. I donated $1 million to start it. Lisa agreed to run it once she finished her nursing degree. Judith handled the legal paperwork. And suddenly, out of the ashes of Darren's betrayal, something good was growing. The trial date was set for 4 months later. Darren's lawyer tried every delay tactic possible, but the judge wasn't having it. The evidence was too strong. The confession too clear. The premeditation too obvious. I spent those months rebuilding my life. Changing every lock. Installing security systems. Reconnecting with friends I'd lost touch with. Learning to trust again, slowly, carefully. Judith stayed with me for the first month, then gradually gave me more independence. By the time the trial started, I was living alone again. But this time, I was surrounded by people who actually cared. Lisa visited weekly. Detective Martinez checked in regularly. Rebecca became an unexpected friend, bonded by our shared experience of seeing through Darren's mask. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I testified for 2 days straight, recounting every horrible moment of being paralyzed and aware while my nephew plotted my death. The jury listened with expressions ranging from horror to disgust. Several cried when I described hearing him reach for my breathing tube. Darren sat at the defense table in an expensive suit his lawyer had chosen, trying to look sympathetic. But I could see the rage beneath. The entitlement. The absolute conviction that he'd deserved my money, deserved my life, deserved everything he tried to take. His lawyer argued brain damage. Argued false memories. Argued that a locked-in syndrome patient couldn't possibly remember events accurately. But the recorded confession destroyed that defense. Darren's own words, admitting to forgery, admitting to attempted murder, admitting he'd been planning it for over a year. Rebecca testified about the documents she'd found. The pharmacy technician testified about being paid to poison my 4. Lisa testified about catching Darren reaching for my ventilator. Detective Martinez presented 18 months of premeditated planning. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Darren's face when the verdict was read was something I'll never forget. Shock. Disbelief. Rage that anyone had dared to hold him accountable. He looked at me across the courtroom with pure hatred, and I looked back with something that felt like peace. The judge sentenced him to 25 years to life. 25 years for what he'd tried to do to me. He'd be almost 60 when he got out, if he ever got out. His lawyer immediately filed appeals, but the DA said they wouldn't go anywhere. The case was too solid. As they led him away in handcuffs, Darren shouted one last thing. "You ruined my life. I gave you everything and you destroyed me." I stood up, supported by Judith on one side and Lisa on the other. "No, Darren. You did this to yourself. I just survived it." 8 months after the trial, I stood in front of 200 nursing students at the university where Lisa was finishing her degree. I'd been invited to speak about my experience, about the importance of advocating for patients who couldn't advocate for themselves. I was lucky, I told them. Lucky that one nurse recognized the signs. Lucky that she trusted her instincts over what the paperwork said. Lucky that she stood between me and the person trying to kill me. Lisa sat in the front row, beaming. She graduated that semester at the top of her class. The foundation offered her a director position with a salary that honored the work she'd do. She accepted immediately. The Claire Patterson Foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. We trained over 5,000 medical professionals to recognize locked-in syndrome. Funded research into new communication devices for patients who couldn't move. Created a database of resources for families navigating this nightmare. Turned my personal hell into something that might save lives. My recovery continued. I walked without assistance now. Drove again. Lived independently. The doctors called it a miracle, but I called it stubbornness. I'd refused to let Darren win. Refused to be the victim he needed me to be. Refused to let his greed and betrayal define my life. I sold the house. Too many bad memories. Bought a smaller place closer to Judith. Somewhere Darren had never been. Somewhere I could build new memories that weren't tainted by his presence. The money Darren had stolen was recovered. 400,000 from offshore accounts, plus the 30,000 he'd liquidated. It went straight to the foundation. Blood money turned into something that might actually help people. Rebecca stayed in touch. She'd started therapy to process her relationship with Darren, to understand how she'd missed the signs of what he was. We met for coffee once a month, Two women who'd survived the same monster in different ways. Detective Martinez called one afternoon with news. Darren had been attacked in prison. Nothing fatal, but serious enough to land him in the infirmary for a week. Apparently, even criminals had standards about people who tried to murder their elderly relatives for inheritance money. "I'm not supposed to be glad about inmates attacking each other," Martinez said. "But I'm not sad about it either." Neither was I. Some part of me, the part that had listened to Darren plan my death while I lay paralyzed, felt a grim satisfaction knowing he wasn't safe behind bars. That he was finally experiencing the fear and helplessness he'd inflicted on me. But mostly, I tried not to think about him. Tried not to give him space in my head or my heart. He'd taken enough from me. I wasn't giving him another second. Lisa's wedding was beautiful. Small and intimate, exactly what she'd wanted. She asked me to give a speech at the reception, and I talked about courage and kindness and the bonds that form between people in the darkest moments. I talked about how Lisa had saved my life not once but multiple times. How she'd believed in me when belief seemed impossible. "Family isn't always blood," I said, raising my glass. "Sometimes family is the nurse who fights for you when you can't fight for yourself. Sometimes family is the lawyer who stands beside you through hell. Sometimes family is the stranger who brings evidence that changes everything. Blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family." The room erupted in applause. Lisa was crying happy tears. And I realized that despite everything Darren had taken from me, despite the trauma and the pain and the months of recovery, I'd gained something too. Real family. Real friends. Real purpose. A year after the stroke, I testified before a state legislative committee about the need for better protocols around DNR orders. About requiring multiple physicians to verify patient consciousness. About protecting vulnerable people from family members who might not have their best interests at heart. The Claire Patterson Act passed 6 months later. New safeguards for end-of-life decisions. New training requirements for medical staff. New consequences for forging DNR documents. My name was now attached to a law that might save lives. Judith retired from her law practice and joined the foundation full-time. She said working with me on something meaningful was better than representing corporations fighting over money. We made a good team. The lawyer and the survivor. Building something good from something terrible. I got letters sometimes. From locked-in syndrome survivors. From their families. From people who'd been saved because a nurse had taken our training course and recognized the signs. Each letter reminded me why I'd survived. Why I'd fought so hard to come back. One letter came from a woman in Ohio. Her husband had been diagnosed with locked-in syndrome after a stroke. For 2 weeks, doctors thought he was in a vegetative state. Then a nurse who'd completed our training program ran additional tests. Discovered he was fully conscious. Aware. Trapped. "Because of you and your foundation, my husband is alive," she wrote. "Because you refused to be silenced, because you fought back, because you turned your pain into purpose, my family is still whole. Thank you doesn't seem like enough, but thank you." I cried reading that letter. Cried because her husband had been saved. Cried because my nightmare had meaning beyond just revenge and justice. Cried because something good had come from the worst experience of my life. 2 years after the stroke, I walked into the law school where I'd earned my degree 40 years earlier. They'd invited me to speak to first-year students about ethics and the law. About how legal documents can be weapons in the wrong hands. About protecting the vulnerable. After my speech, a young woman approached. She reminded me of myself at that age. Determined. Ambitious. Ready to change the world. "What you went through," she said hesitantly. "How did you survive it? Not just physically, but mentally. How did you keep going?" I thought about that question. About lying in that hospital bed, paralyzed and terrified, listening to my nephew plan my murder. About the moment I'd moved my finger for the first time. About the phone call with Darren where I'd gotten his confession. About standing in court and watching him be led away in handcuffs. "I survived because I refused to be erased," I said finally. Because even when I couldn't move or speak, I was still me. Still thinking. Still fighting. Still believing that truth matters and justice is possible. My body was a prison for a while, but my mind never stopped working, never stopped planning, never stopped hoping. The young woman nodded, taking it in. And the person who did this to you, do you hate him? I considered that. Did I hate Darren? The nephew I'd raised. The boy I'd loved. The man who'd tried to kill me for money. I don't think about him enough to hate him, I said honestly. Hate would give him power over me. Would mean he's still in my head, still controlling my emotions. I chose something different. I chose to build something meaningful from what he tried to destroy. That's the best revenge. Living well. Living purposefully. Turning his evil into something good. That was the truth. Darren was in prison, and I was free. Free to build the foundation. Free to travel. Free to form real relationships based on trust and love instead of manipulation and lies. Free to wake up every morning grateful to be alive. I still had nightmares sometimes. Still jumped at unexpected sounds. Still checked locks obsessively. Trauma doesn't disappear just because justice was served. But it got quieter. Less consuming. More like a scar than an open wound. 3 years after everything, I received a letter from Darren's lawyer. He was applying for early parole. Asking me to write a letter supporting his release. Claiming he'd found religion in prison. Changed. Become a better person. I laughed when I read it. Actually laughed. Then I wrote my own letter to the parole board. Detailing every moment of his 18-month plan to murder me. Reminding them of the premeditation. The cold calculation. The absolute lack of remorse even at trial. Darren Patterson tried to kill me for money, I wrote. He planned it for over a year. He forged documents, stole hundreds of thousands of dollars, and tried to end my life multiple times. He showed no mercy when I was paralyzed and helpless. I ask that you show him none now. The parole was denied. He'd serve his full sentence. 25 years minimum. Maybe longer. Life continued. The foundation grew. Lisa got promoted. Judith and I traveled to conferences together, spreading awareness. I dated occasionally, though trusting people with my heart was harder now. But I was okay with taking that slow. With being careful. With protecting the life I'd fought so hard to keep. If you're watching this and you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for caring about what happened to me. I hope you take away something meaningful from this. A reminder to trust your instincts when something feels wrong. A reminder that family isn't always who you're related to. A reminder that surviving isn't enough. You have to choose what surviving means. I chose to turn my pain into purpose. To build something that might save others from similar nightmares. To refuse to let the worst thing that ever happened to me define who I am. You can choose that too. Whatever you're going through, whatever darkness you're facing, you can decide to be more than your trauma. More than your pain. More than what someone tried to make you. I'm Claire Patterson. I survived locked-in syndrome. I survived attempted murder. I survived betrayal by someone I loved. And I built a life worth living from the ashes of everything I almost lost. That's not the end of my story. It's just the beginning of the next chapter. Please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss more stories like this. Stories of survival. Stories of justice. Stories that remind us that even in our darkest moments, there's always a reason to keep fighting. Leave a comment below. Share your thoughts. Tell me what resonated with you. Your words matter. Your voice matters. Together, we can build a community that supports survivors and demands justice for those who've been wronged. Thank you for being part of my journey. Thank you for witnessing my story. And thank you for believing that truth, no matter how long it takes to surface, always matters. Until next time, stay safe. Trust carefully. And remember, you're stronger than you think. Even when you can't move, even when you can't speak, even when everything seems lost, you have power. The power to survive. The power to fight back. The power to turn your nightmare into someone else's hope. I'm living proof of that. And if I can do it, so can you.